Welcome to episode number 19. I am your host, Sebastian ENGSTROM, and today, Saxxon McCarty joins us. We chat about Carnivore, we chat about fasting, we chat about what really will elevate how you feel, how you show up, get you more energy, get you just feeling like a phenomenal human being and realizing, oh, well, what I feel like right now, shit, I didn't know I could feel this amazing. Why? Well, I mean, I've tried it. I do intermittent fasting. I do almost a carnivore-ish diet, and it made a major difference. Saxxon has tried it. He's doing it. He's explored so much, and he keeps at it. It's a phenomenal conversation. Enjoy it with Saxxon McCarty. If you haven't done so too, please, if this is giving back to you, if this is a valuable conversation for you, please scroll down, go deed of the day, 5 stars on Apple, or subscribe, like, it's up to you. Really what this helps us with is spread the message to more people. So thank you. And I mean that. If you do it, I really appreciate you. Thank you for doing such, even if you don't. So CrossFit programs, we have 2, methodical CrossFit, we have gymnastics CrossFit program. Both of them I have programmed, I do them. I've done this for years. There's a reason why I did so many programs. I realized there's not what I want out there. I want to put it out there. There's a reason why I get the results, why I get the skills, why I get the strength. Check out my socials. Proof is in the pudding. I do them. I help you in the app with videos, with instructions, with the coaching. So if you want to find them and learn more about them, Safina.io or SafinaStrength.com. And for 15% off, hit Safina all caps 15, and I'll see you on the other side. Free trial too, 7 days. Enjoy the conversation with Saxxon. There's always a new idea, and it's not just ideas, but you're putting it to the test too. Where does this come from, you think? Has this always been part of your life? Is it from family or yeah? Where do you see the origin from?
Yeah, I think from my dad's side, he's the one that likes to tinker, and he's a creative. He's into music just like I am, and so I think it's from my dad's side that I get the creativity piece where you're just thinking of new ways to do things, and yeah. So I think that's from his side, and then from my mom's side, I get more of her social ability. So I think having ideas is great, but you need to be able to socialize. You need to be able to get people on board with it. You need to be able to motivate people to want to build something with you as well. And so there's, I think, a little bit of a combination there, but that's all I can think of from where I learned it from.
Yeah. So it's not your regular person that goes off and is in a leadership position at for many would be a demanding job, but you always have a new idea that you want to execute on. You're reading, you're listening to things, you're constantly learning. What you consume is sometimes what a regular person might consume in a year, what you do in a week, to the degree of an average American. What is the trick? What is it that makes you be able to really take in all that information and learn and continue to have that desire to keep getting after it?
I don't think there's a trick. I think it's you either want to do that or you don't. And if you want to do it, go out and learn. I mean, at the end of the day, like for me, and there's different capacities for everyone. Okay. So like, for example, when I take a look at super successful examples like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, I mean, these guys, I would consider them substantially more efficient and or just have more energy by default than I do to do that, right? Because if you look at Elon Musk, he started 5 separate companies while he's running some of the most successful companies in the world, and he still has the energy to do it. And he has 6 kids. One of them, by the way, is named Saxxon, ironically. And so it's like, I couldn't imagine having the energy to raise 5 or 6 kids and run 5 very successful companies that I started from the ground. I say that, but I would love to. And if I have that energy, and I might have that energy, part of being optimal from a diet perspective and biohacking and stuff is to be able to get that energy, of which I have. And so like, you asked me 3 years ago, would you start all these side businesses and all this other stuff? I'd say, no, I'm freaking tired. I'm eating all the grains in the world and all the lectins, and my gut's all messed up and my brain's all messed up and everything's just messed up. And so like, I can only do one thing, if that, well. Now I can do many things well. And I'm hoping to continue that process by biohacking, et cetera, to keep doing that until I can run maybe 5 companies. I don't know. We'll see.
So what is it that you've learned from biohacking? How has that changed your life? Because it seems like that's what you attribute a lot of your ability to being dialed in and truly focus on multiple different things, not necessarily at the same time, but doing one thing at a time, but doing it really well.
What I've learned is that the brain controls everything, and you need to make sure your brain's running optimally for it to want to do more, right? And so I think at the end of the day, the fuel you put in is one thing. If you're putting ethanol in an octane run gas tank, you're not going to get very far. So I mean, obviously, food is the most important thing there, but you can also use that quote unquote hacks, which are just basically known efficiencies, whether legal or illegal, depending on whatever government thinks it is. It has nothing to do with morality at this point, I think. But, I choose to use mostly the legal substances because at the end of the day, that makes the most sense from a cost risk perspective right now in my life. But I think that just because you're all natural and that doesn't make you more, or doesn't make you better than anyone else, right? I think that if you can leverage efficiencies to get the same results or better results, then I say go for it. Some people call it cheating, some people call it hacking, whatever you want to call it. I don't care at the end of the day, as long as we're achieving the results we want, right? So I think that it's just taught me like you can be better by making a lot of different changes or leveraging other substances that allow you to be better.
What does that look like for you specifically?
Like what's my daily regimen?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now I'm not on it, but we're going through some fertility stuff, me and my wife, to freeze some embryos just in case we do want to have kids in the future, which we don't for the foreseeable future, but we're getting to the age where I'm 33. I'm 32, she's 33. And they say before 35 is the best time to do that. So we're going to freeze, quite a few eggs. But if I wasn't in that process of fertility, I would be on testosterone replacement therapy 100%. I think everyone above 30 should be, unless you're following a very strict carnivore diet where you're getting your high levels of cholesterol, and which are a good thing. If you ask a lot of doctors, they say it's bad. But I think if you're eating that type of diet 100% through and through, your testosterone levels, especially the free testosterone, should be decent. But I want to be optimal, of course. So testosterone replacement therapy at a low dose, about 120 milligrams a week, is what I will remain taking after this the next couple months there. And that helps with a lot of different areas. But that being said, that's one of my biggest tools in the shed there, which helped me optimally perform, grow muscle faster, all that other stuff, right? So that's one thing. And then I've tried a lot of things daily, but the things that have stuck with me are ipamorelin and I think it's CJC 1245. It's 2 peptides that really help with body composition and energy and a few other things. It promotes growth hormone. So I take that daily. And then protein is what I focus on first and foreboost from a fuel perspective. So once I hit my protein levels, which is about 200 grams of protein per day, then the rest of it, I can eat a little bit of fat and maybe a little bit of carbs just to keep the testosterone up. But that's it. And then modafinil. I take about a half of modafinil, a half of 100 milligrams, so it's 50 milligrams a day in the morning to just help with the dopamine. I have a naturally low dopamine level, so that helps with the dopamine, but also gives me the energy to sort of be creative and bust through tasks that I normally wouldn't want to do if I didn't have a little bit of that help. So that's my day to day. Weekends are different, but
Uh-huh. So you've mentioned carnivore. You have not gone into it. You've hinted towards it with 200 grams of protein. This is not. It's up and coming for sure, and more widely acceptable. Still, a very small percentage of the population who do that. You did something very different a few years ago. You got into, well, why don't you tell us briefly about the journey that you've been on from the food perspective and where you're at right now, and even what does a day look like?
yeah, well, I originally started to go the vegan route. I think that's when I talked with you about it. And luckily, you course corrected me to Dave Asprey. But that being said, 3 years ago, again, I was at the point where I had regained, let's call it 30 pounds of fat, probably lost about 10 pounds of muscle, so really about 40 pounds of fat. And I was at the point where my body was breaking down, my back was hurting, pinched nerves, lumbar, spine issues with discs bulging, and having to go to the chiropractor, and just like hypertension and hot all the time, and all this stuff, which was just taking away from my thinking at the end of the day. And so I finally woke up and I was like, I need to change all of this. And so again, I don't read book. I'm sorry, I read books, I listen to books, but I'm a experienced kind of guy, right? So like I went out and just, everyone's talking about this veganism thing, so I tried vegan for a few months maybe, and going vegan, especially if you're eating like whole food vegan, right? So like full vegetables and all that, is 900 times better. That's not quantifiable, but I think it's 900 times better than a standard American diet that our government and the FDA shoots down everyone's throats, which is like the worst diet you could ever have. So I was feeling better, but I wasn't optimal. I was still not putting on muscle, which is a huge issue with most vegans. I'd say 98% of vegans can't do that effectively because they're not getting the right amino acids. So, and then there's also an issue with absorption of protein as well. There's a very low, I think it's 18% for most vegetables for the protein absorption. So you're just eating a bunch of stuff for less absorption. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But anyway, long story short, veganism helped me feel a little better, dropped a little bit of pounds, but I wasn't where I needed to be. And so I continued to evolve, and I was going down. I think I was talking to you about it, and you had mentioned Bulletproof, which we started with Bulletproof coffee, which really kicked my mornings off very, very well. It gave me a lot of energy at the beginning of the day, which was able to get me to the intermittent fasting piece, where I think everyone should be doing that, since it mimics our ancestry back hundreds, thousands of years ago, where we would go sometimes days without eating, which I think is a good thing for autophagy, to be able to kind of reverse aging and a whole bunch of other stuff. But Dave Asprey went down this journey, for the last 15 years of his life. He actually started in cybersecurity, funnily enough, as an executive, and then went down the biohacking route. And so like all of the stuff he put together was really easily digestible, and I learned a lot through that. But again, you can always be better. You can always improve, of course. And so I wanted to figure out, how do I feel great now on this keto, high fat diet, but what is the most important markers of longevity and energy, right? And so I found out through Sean Baker and a few different doctors, but Dr. Sean Baker and Dr. Gabrielle Leone, who's a really good carnivore enthusiast, but they basically presented me with the data that showed that muscle, your whole entire muscular system that's all connected, is an endocrine organ, and it is the most important organ in your body and the number one marker for longevity. So the more you build of it, the markers with correlation show that you will live longer. So my thought process is build as much muscle as possible that can fit on my frame, and focus on that. And what's going to do that is enough protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and an mTOR when needed, to be able to build that muscle over time. And so that's where I looked at the diet, and I said the keto diet's great, but you're over consuming too much energy, so too much fat and or carbs, and not getting enough protein. And enough protein, if you go by the FDA's recommendations, is like 0.5 grams per pound of body weight, which is absolutely absurd. That's not even enough to maintain your muscle, which is why you see sarcopenia and a lot of old people breaking down and becoming lethargic and starting to hunch over and all that, and their bones are breaking down, all this other stuff. I mean, that's a direct correlation, I think, because they're not eating enough protein. And as your body ages, you need more and more protein. So today I need one gram per pound of body weight roughly, which I'm at about 195 now. In the future, I'll need more. And so I'll continue to increase that over time. So I saw that carnivore was the only diet, and it's not even just carnivore, it's just animal-based diet. So all, steak, pork, which I don't eat a lot of pork, but pork, if it's raised properly, is a good thing. And then, things like venison and bison and stuff like that. So anything that's a ruminant essentially is a good source of protein, highly digestible, about 45% digesting for protein, and then has the full essential amino acid breakdown that allows your muscles to grow through muscle protein synthesis. And so vegetables and overconsumption of fat and oils, anything refined like an oil, is not beneficial unless, of course, you need fat. But no human I know today needs more fat. I think every single one can lose a percentage of fat. Even myself, I'm down to like 13% body fat now. My goal is about 7%. So I'm going to avoid all the added fats and such as I am on that journey. So that's sort of where I ended up with carnivore, which is mostly animal based, and then a few, vegetables here and there if I'm out and about and someone's like, hey, you should try this broccoli, but that's about it.
So curiosity, it sounds like that was the prompting factor that transitioned you from keto to carnivore. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So now being on strict carnivore, it's there's for anyone who doesn't know, Google carnivore. How would you describe carnivore in simple terms, and why is it controversial? What does it work for you?
Yeah, to explain it in simple terms, this is exactly what our ancestors ate. And someone would then counter that and say, but we're living longer, aren't we? And I would counter that and say, that's what we've been told. But if you really look at the data and you exclude children dying underneath the age of 5 for millennia before we had modern medicine, those numbers are significant, right? The number of children that died before the age of 5 are significant. And so that number is always calculated in the life expectancy. And so the irony is that by looking at the data, you'll see that humans hundreds of years ago that we have the record of course, lived much longer lives when you took out the age 0 to 5 out of that life expectancy average. So if you've got 50% of children dying underneath the age of 5, and you put that number in the average, the mean of life expectancy, you're going to see drastic numbers change. And so long story short, I think people don't realize that. And we've gone away from what our ancestors ate, which was basically you go out, the hunter would kill a cow or a fox or whatever the animal of choice was at the time, and they would bring it back, and the whole colony would feast on that for a few days, maybe a week, however long it took. So they were mostly carnivore. And then obviously when winter was coming, the gatherers would make sure that we had the vegetables, some of the fruits, and some of the stuff that would fatten us, which is essentially what bears do every time they go into hibernation, is they give themselves type 2 diabetes by consuming a ton of vegetables and berries to essentially become insulin resistant and build fat stores. And so my thing is let's just go back to where we were and follow that type of diet, which is what we evolved to eat. And so I'd say that's what carnivore is an ancestral diet composed mostly of animal foods, unless you're trying to get fat for whatever reason, like a winter that you have no electricity or whatever, but we don't have that issue today. So I think the reason why people have lost that is because, and you can get into conspiracies, but I mean, at the end of the day, again, if you go to the FDA's recommendations in the standard American diet, I mean, they're saying eat grains, which is inflammatory, as you know. Only the people that actually have gluten intolerance feel it mostly, but everyone is gluten intolerant. It just matters of to what degree from a cellular level. Their recommendations to eat 50% of your diet of vegetables, like 50% of that diet doesn't have the protein requirements that your body needs to build muscle, and muscle is the longevity organ. So that's false. Then you got all these tomatoes and peppers, and you got all these lectins that are just breaking down your gut, which is releasing bacteria into the blood brain barrier. And so you start thinking differently with that. So it's all the stuff they're recommending you is the complete opposite of what you should be doing. Their meat recommendation is like 2 ounces a day. You need to be eating 10 times that and less of everything else. So it's just misinformation from our governments, unfortunately, that I believe everyone has gone down the wrong path, which is why you see 80 to 90% obesity and diabetes and cancer, the all-cause mortality. You've got all of it that stems from that. And yeah, I think it's going to be hard to reverse that because they're in a different state of mind because of that. And they're fed, they don't want to learn what the real or what the most optimal diet for them as a human is. So
yeah, to simplify this for those more newer to these concepts and are wondering, well, what the hell are you talking about? Like this, you're out there. So in short, grains, different types of plants, there are certain types of proteins that are in them. And our bodies, like lectins that Saxxon said, they react in a hostile way towards them. So they start creating inflammation as a response. And therefore now energy is now utilized in a different way. You feel slow, you don't think clear, you can get mucus, your joints start hurting. You just want to sit in front of the TV or do nothing. You get angry, you get irritated. There are multiple different ways that you can experience this. And if you do this over and over and over, as a lot of Americans do, you get into becoming a zombie. And then you add blue light from your phones. You have dopamine hits from your notifications from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, now you're very easily controllable. Yeah, you can be controllable, but you're inflamed and you're not feeling well. So the more you're getting into the system now, this can easily be taken into a conspiracy theory. I'm not going to go there. But if, let's say, in simple ways, taking back the control of your life in a simple way is putting your health first. And this is something that you definitely have done, and talk about seeing the results. Like when you put your health first, there's a quote by Paul Chek is, at one point in your life or not, your health will become your number one priority. No one is excluded from that because you are going to get sick. It's inevitable. You're going to get hurt. It's inevitable. So what do you do then when you can't walk, you can't talk, you can't breathe? So we're talking about this as the body has been optimized in certain ways to take in certain types of foods. And I have been on a similar path. I've not gone all the way down to just eating meats primarily. I still have several vegetables that I do include, but it's definitely a more dialed in diet. When it comes to, and this is one of the key parts that I never did before, was fasting, autophagy. So replenishing, renewing the energy and your cells. It's something I was scared shitless about before, especially as an athlete, and especially when it comes to you speaking about protein consumption and building muscle and that leading to longevity of your life. Now that you start fasting, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to lose muscle mass. I'm going to lose who I am. And this made me very scared. How can you explain how that journey has been and what your knowledge has been of fasting?
Yeah, luckily I follow a doctor who he got his PhD and he built 2 revolutionary fitness systems. One is ENGSTROM, which strengthens your bones, which I recommend everyone to do once a week. I do it once a week. I'm actually supposed to go tonight, but I'm thinking about rescheduling until tomorrow because I love this conversation. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is strengthening your muscles in the most efficient manner available that I know of, which is variable resistance with specific bands and a specific system that allows you to put a lot of weight on your loading your muscles as opposed to your joints, which is what traditional weightlifting is all about. And his name is Dr. John Jaquish. And when he built these systems, he did a lot of research on the optimal the optimal diet to make things more efficient for people using these systems. Because I mean, if you're on the standard American diet and you're using these systems, you'll get results, but you want to get the best results in the least amount of time, right? So return on energy, return on investment, return on time, all of those things you want to optimize if you want to be the best always. So he did the whole animal-based diet. He did vegan first and then animal-based diet. So I knew that. But when it came to fasting, he was doing multiple day fasting for 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours, sometimes 5-day fasting. And what he looked at when he was doing the research was when you fast, which means 0 calories, well, fasting actually, to not break autophagy, there's scientific literature that shows that you must not break 50 calories in a day. So as long as you're underneath the 50 calorie threshold, you will not interrupt this process. But when your body's in autophagy, ironically, so when you're fasting, no food at all, and as long as you're less than 50 calories, so coffee with some MCT oil in it, perfectly fine as long as it's less than 50 calories, so measure it. Then your body increases growth hormone factor, which helps with muscle building downstream. It's not directly correlated. And your body also protects muscle because your human growth hormone is increased. And what it does is to use energy, it wants to use free form energy. So fatty acids that are in your bloodstream. And if you don't have those, or if you don't have any glucose, for example, because you don't eat carbs, then your body goes through gluconeogenesis where it will essentially turn fat into glucose, which is available for your brain, your liver, and all your other muscle functions, et cetera. And so now it'll optimally run your body by taking away from your fat stores. So fasting actually preserves muscle by increased growth hormone and other mechanisms. I believe IGF-1, and there's a few other ones in there, but it protects muscle and it burns fat at the same time, which is, I think, everyone's goal at the end of the day. If you want to be if you want to have a good body composition, for example. So it does the complete opposite of what people thought, where it's like, oh, it'll start eating your muscle. And it's like, no, it has protection mechanisms in place. And that makes sense, because back in the hunter-gatherer days, thousands of years ago, why would your body, if you haven't hunted a boar in the last 2 weeks and you're really looking for one, why would it get weaker? No, it's going to make you want to get stronger and have the capability to go hunt for that boar. And so your body evolved to do this process when you're in autophagy, is protect your muscle, burn fat as energy. And so, I think that's the most powerful tool from that perspective. But then also autophagy, as you know, I mean, it essentially eats bad or cells that are not optimal in your body. So you think cancer, and you think, even some of the fat cells where you got a lot of brown adipose tissue or whatever. I mean, you start to drop not only fat, but also bad malignant cells like cancer cells. And so if you go through this process every week, if you will, like I do it every day. I fast for 24 hours a day and I eat once a day, right? And so I'm getting a good few hours of autophagy every day. And then once in a while, I'll throw in a 48-hour fast so I can get a full 24 hours of autophagy, just chugging through all the bad cells. And so I think having that type of lifestyle makes the most sense. And it also helps it builds more muscle. They actually have a study showing people who have fasted for 24 hours lost more fat and build more muscle without even having to work out than someone in a calorie restricted group who did work out. So it's like you build more muscle by just sitting there and doing nothing, absolutely nothing, with the process of autophagy.
How have you seen this affect people around you too, even close people to you? Fasting.
So my wife follows the same protocol that I do, and it's helped her a lot with being able to get to some of her goals. I'm still trying to get her to understand that cardio. I'm sorry. I want to get her to understand that what the fitness industry calls cardio, which is like running, endurance training, etc. I want to make her or I want her to get to the point where she understands that is actually a negative result on body composition. So the more you run, the more cortisol releases and the more fat you will substantially gain, and you'll lose more and more muscle as you do more and more cardio, right? Unless it's high intensity, that's a completely different story where you're able to burn fat and maintain muscle. But most forms of cardio are garbage for the purpose of fat loss. So, but fasting has really helped her maintain where she's at. And now I'm trying to get her to build more muscle and drop fat by doing variable resistance and stuff like that. But outside of that, there's a lot of other people in my group that will try it. But unfortunately, most people in my group are not looking to be optimized. So it really hasn't influenced any of them.
I think your father had an experience with it too, right?
I'm sorry. So that, yeah, good point there. So he's used fasting over the last 4 months to drop about 70 pounds. So he does about 1 5-day fast every other week.
Jesus.
So
again, that's 5 days. He just said 5 days.
Yeah, he went to the extreme, which I love. Like maybe that's where I get my extremeness from. But I thought he wouldn't have done it. And I told him how it works, and he's like, "Oh, screw it, I'm just gonna do it 5 days in a row, and then 5 days off, 5 days in a row." And it worked. So he's almost down to 200 now, from two. I think he was actually like 280 when he started a few months back.
How is this even sustainable?
If you have the fat stores, your body will continue to use it as fuel. You can go months as long as you have the fat stores.
And
it's like a battery, right? If the battery's there, you're good. If the battery's not there, you better put another battery on or recharge that one, right?
What does he consume during these 5 days?
Water and coffee. I'm going to get him to push the buckle a little bit soon with dry fasting, which is something I've been experimenting with over the last month. It's really changed things. And that's no food, no water, no nothing for as long as you can go. I would recommend 24 hours is what I've been doing. But I know some people that are doing about 3 days of no water, no food. So
why no water?
So my goal, so as a fat person that I was, and this is the reason why I recommend it to my dad, we have extra. So we have extra fat cells because when you overeat for a long period of time, your body continues to create new fat cells, whereas people that are very lean their whole life never needed that because they never were at a point where they were insulin resistant, where their fat cells were having to flow over and create new fat cells. So they have the same amount of fat cells as they were with when they were born, generally. So that's why a lot of lean people stay lean even when they go eat a full pizza. Me or him, on the other hand, or any other person who's gained a lot of weight, hundreds of pounds extra, we have a lot more fat cells, and fat cells cannot be destroyed unless you do liposuction, which I don't want to do. That's crazy to me. I don't want to be ripping cells out of my body. I don't know what the long-term effects of that are. Or you starve them to death. And the only way to starve a fat cell to death is to not drink any water, because after 12 hours of no fluid, your body needs oxygen still. And the only way to get oxygen, if you haven't provided H2O, is to go to its fat cells and rip them apart and take the oxygen away from them. So you can now begin the journey over the course of, it'll probably take me about a year if I'm doing this every weekday for about 18 to 24 hours. But you can now remove all of the fat cells that you once put on. And then, so it's almost an act of liposuction, but naturally. And then you also get the benefits of autophagy being 2 to 3 times more powerful in a shorter period of time. So a 24-hour dry fast is something similar to a 3-day water fast from an autophagy perspective.
What is that like to experience that?
First day sucks. Second day was okay. Third day, it's normal. I'm about to stop drinking water at 6 p.m. and I won't drink water again until probably like 10 a.m. the next day.
So when you say it sucks, please elaborate.
I mean, it sucks because your body's like, you used to always drink, and what are you doing now? It's just like going into regular intermittent fasting. Like throwing away breakfast was a hard thing to do for most people and for me, since you're used to it.
Yeah. Why don't you go into what is that transition period like? Like what was that like, even for your dad? When you say that it's difficult, when you say yeah that sucks, like what are the how does it show mentally and physically?
It's all mental, right? Your body is so, when you eat, you actually drop dopamine. And there's a reason for that, because when your body's hungry and you go eat, you get a reward system. And so like your body's like, oh, great. I was able to satisfy my hunger, et cetera, et cetera. But so when you're used to eating 6 to 8 meals a day, like of course the FDA recommends you to do, then you're essentially used to these dopamine drops every 2 to 3 hours of food. Okay. And so the minute you stop feeding your body dopamine, or feeding your body its ability to drop dopamine all the time, it's going to freak out. It's just like a drug user, right? When you stop doing whatever your drug was, this is not normal. Like the body wants the dopamine, your brain wants the dopamine. And so when you stop that, it's mind over matter at that point. It's like, I know my body wants food, but I also know my body doesn't need food. Hell, it doesn't need food for the next 3 weeks, really. At the end of the day, I got enough fat. Well, I had enough fat stores to be able to not eat for 3 weeks and be totally fine. But you got to know that knowledge first to be able to override your monkey brain, I like to call it, which is it's your basic. It's not your neocortex where you have all the logic and all the information. It's your monkey brain. It's your limbic system that's just like, oh, I just want this. I want to feel this. I want to feel that. And it's like, once you have that knowledge, you can now override that system and say, you don't need breakfast. You don't need lunch. You don't need anything for the next 3 weeks. If you really want to, just do it. But I will say the 1 week thing is actually a challenge. I've only done that once in my life, and my dad being able to just override it with the knowledge that I gave him right off the bat was awesome, and it worked for him. I'm more of the 1 meal a day that is sustainable. I like to eat. I genuinely like eating. And so I'm going to just leave that dopamine drop for once a day for myself. But if you could do weeks, go for weeks. You're not going to put yourself in any harm by doing that, unless you're too skinny. Then
I have a natural tendency to have a very fast metabolism, and the longest I've gone is almost 24 hours. I start losing body mass rather quickly. I don't have much fat at all. Never had my entire life.
But how are you measuring that?
How I'm measuring?
How do you measure that other than the thought that you're losing mass, which I would challenge that you weren't, but I want to figure out, are you using a DEXA scan? Are you using how are you measuring that?
Yeah, there's no DEXA scan, nothing, no electromagnetic waves, nothing of that sort. It's just by feel, which I guess one can argue it could be pump. And sometimes when you get glycose from whatever food that you're taking in, it can add to that. Which actually, let's leave that topic, because you're bringing up a good point that I'm going to consider in the future here. But that being the case, anyone who hasn't tried it, and from a liability standpoint, please research it. We're not doctors here. So check it out by yourself. Maybe try 24 hours. I think anyone can do that, and then go on. I think there's so much interesting information about this when it comes to carnivore diet that we're speaking a lot about here. There is John Saladino is someone to recommend that you can check out, that Saxxon and I have been speaking about before. And there are other good, interesting people that you can check out. Cal Kingsbury is one. Ben Greenfield is another person. Even Dave Asprey has some information on this. There are many names. Rob Wolf that you can check on that. When it comes to carnivore diet, dialing it back slightly to that, there are experiences for some people when they start doing it that the body is just clearing itself. There's also with keto, like keto rash, carnivore rash, there are the runs, the diarrhea, whatever it might be. What was that transition like for you? Did you experience anything? It might sound harsh here to the public, but there are some incredible benefits to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the minute you start cutting out all the crap, your gut bacteria starts to change. And when that happens, you get different types of stools. It could be diarrhea, et cetera. It could be, your body just, kind of craves what it used to want. And so therefore, if you're not feeding it, it just like a withdrawal, you could start experience the keto flu, if you will. It takes about a week. Get through it all. It's worth it. Get your body running on fat, not glucose. Your body wants glucose. Your brain, your everything actually prefers. It prefers to use triglycerides, which are in fat. It does not. It can use glucose, but at the end of the day, if you don't have glucose available through carbs, it'll go through gluconeogenesis and it'll feed your brain the glucose it wants. It'll feed your liver the glucose it wants. So at the end of the day, you could cut out carbs you could have 0 carbs a day forever and you could live. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There's essential fats and there's essential proteins. These are essential micronutrients. There are no such thing as a carb. You can cut out carbs forever. So the minute you do, though, your body has to adjust, and therefore you might have some adverse effects. But once you're through it, your body is now running optimally, and then you just got to figure out ways to hack, the results that you want going forward. I mean, at the end of the day, I could have stopped at keto and been pretty healthy, but I want to go above and beyond pretty healthy. I want to go to optimal, the most optimal way to eat. That's me.
So when it comes to the meat that we're speaking to, just to be very clear on that, there is the argument, well, you should stop eating meat for at least once a day every week. There is a heavily flawed argument to that for the environment and the damage that it takes by the carbon monoxide that is produced, and mainly by cars. Check out the study. Again, check out that study. Us eating meat and having grass-fed beef is going to lead to, and that's what we're talking about, grass-fed beef being the key. So if you don't know of this, check out grass beef. When it comes to regular beef, when it comes to corn-fed beef, soy-fed beef, that is usually as we get inflamed, they get inflamed. We, in turn, take over that inflammation. Usually, there are also mycotoxins. And when that is, we're speaking about different types of molds. And that is something that when we're exposed to, slows us down, inflames us as well. Therefore, when the American Association, FDA, and so forth recommend eat a smaller amount of meat, there is truth to it. And I'm saying that with an asterisk because don't eat conventional meat. Just if you do eat a lot of meat, be very specific about the source that it comes from. Do your research. There's the word of dirty keto that some of you might have heard of. Research it. If you haven't, check that out too. There is a different, the biggest thing that when Saxxon and I speak about this, we speak about the highest quality. We speak about grass-fed. We speak about from finish to end, nothing grain-fed. We talk about everything organic when it comes to any type of vegetables that we're speaking to. So whenever you're taking anything in, you will become the source of it too, in one way or another. So fasting takes time. Changing habits takes time. Saxxon is just one phenomenal human being for having gone through the transition, and he's freaking leading and charging through, breaking barriers and edges. And one thing that we touched on briefly is the X3 bar. He didn't name it by name, but it's a minimal, you can say minimalist type of workout. Using resistance in a way different way. So if you don't like going to the gym, if you want to check out an alternative, check that out. Jakish is the name that Saxxon mentioned as well. Before we depart here, is there any golden nugget or gem from your journey here of health that you'd like to leave the listeners off with?
I think it's just go on the journey of learning and don't stop. I think it's, we could tell everyone to the blue, I can go to a vegan and tell them why they should be vegan. And a vegan come to me and tell me why I shouldn't be a carnivore. I mean, at the end of the day, I want people to start their own journeys of figuring out what's optimal, if that's what they want to be. If they want to be optimal, so they can think clear, do better things in life, etc., and just be growth mindset, essentially, right? Like just feed that type of thing. And there's a lot of people that don't want that. I'm okay with that as well. But I think doing your own research is the most important thing, instead of just listening to to us, obviously. So there's plenty of studies, plenty of sources out there that show why it's actually plants and plant farms that are producing way more CO2 emissions than, let's say, a regenerative beef or a regenerative farm for animals would produce, which is a carbon negative outcome, which means that it's sequestering carbon. Whereas with plants, with all the pesticides, with all the animals they're killing through the pesticides, such as the birds that eat the plants and all that other stuff. I mean, you're harming so much more than you would with a regenerative farm, and you're producing so much more CO2 than you would. So anything you thought was real, question it, go do your research. And then if you come to the same conclusion, great. But more times than not, you'll find that everything that you read on the media or that you've heard or anything like that is tipsy-turvy. It's the complete opposite of what is reality. So that's what I would recommend.
Saxxon, thank you very much for being on. It was a pleasure, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to doing another one of these.
Saxxon just brought it. The guy is so freaking smart. I mean, talk about elevating himself and other people around him. And it's just, if you ever talk to this person, the mind that he has and the ideas that he has, I mean, it's out of this world. Find out more about Saxxon in the show notes, the links there. And if you feel like this brought you value, if you feel like you want to give back, scroll down on Apple, hit 5 stars, or click subscribe, like on any platform is really helpful. Even write a review. I mean, this helps us spread the message to so many more people. So thank you for doing that. And if you haven't checked out the CrossFit programs, Methodical CrossFit, Gymnastics CrossFit program, I do them myself. I programmed them years in the making. I finally released them. They're methodical, progressive, structured, so you actually get improvements. You see the results in strength and skill, as well as getting leaner. There's nutrition to it as well. I mean, as you heard with Saxxon and I. But I will be there every single step of the way in the app with the videos, with the instructions. I mean, proof is in the pudding. I do them. I'm shredded. There is a lot to these programs. So if you want to get the 7-day trial, check them out at Safina.io or SafinaStrength.com. And for 15% off, Safina, all caps, 15. Sending you much love.